Thank you. If you will open up your Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 5. We'll be spending our time next night in 1 Peter chapter 5. So last week I asked Alyssa as we were leaving actually another congregation, I said, so you know I'm going to be preaching at North Boulevard, and you've been to hear us preach every single time that's been possible. What would you like to hear? Because you kind of heard everything I've got so far. And she decided that this would be a good lesson for you all here, and I very much agree with her. So, and is in preparation of us being married and sharing in all things, if you do not enjoy this tonight, you can also go to her and complain. It starts speaking. Well, we're talking tonight about surviving the lion out of 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 9. Well, growing up, my brother and I really enjoyed. We went to my grandmother's house. We would sit down and we would watch these National Geographic documentaries for kids. All sorts of interesting stories up with that, such as areas like Indonesia and Africa, Australia, Asia, the Great Barrier Reef. But I think our favorite, though, was Africa. And it probably was because of all those iconic animals that come out of Africa, such as the crocodile, the elephant, the rhino, the hippo, the water buffalo, and of course, the lion. What's interesting is of those numbers I just named, 5 of those are considered the big 5, some of the most dangerous animals there, but 4 of those are herbivores. They don't eat people, they're just very, very aggressive. But the lion, though, it triggers a sense of fear and healthy respect from us because of what it can do and the power that we see come out of it. For instance, back years ago, there was a small area called Tsavo. So you might be familiar with this story, where over a period of about 3 months, a pair of lions killed and took out about a little more than 130 men. Short period of time. And it caused so much terror and fear out of all of these men in the camp, not knowing if they would wake up the next morning. In fact, it got to this terrible point where the hospital tent kept getting hit over and over again. And the men decided, we're gonna move the tent right before night. We're gonna move to the opposite side of the camp, and we're gonna leave the old hospital tent set up so they'll maybe come there and we can trap them and get them there. And as they sit, they begin to hear screams from the other side of the camp, because these lions were clever enough and smart enough and were such powerful hunters to see and recognize what's going on, and went and struck again where that weak spot is. And I think people fear just because of how the power behind how lions hunt. Well, female lions do it just a little bit differently than the males do. Females use what's called pack tactics. The head female will pick out their target near the watering hole or open savanna. And she'll get close and then make herself known, causing chaos among all of the herds of animals, to where that specific target is now kind of stuck, and she makes her beeline for that, and that's when the rest of the females will make themselves known, and they'll converge upon that one prey. And it's quite, I would really call it scarily beautiful to watch this happen on things like such YouTube or other documentaries, to watch them do this and the coordination that goes between these animals. But males do it a little bit differently. They do it either solo or in pairs, and they utilize the bush or the brush in a pretty clever way. They'll pick off that same kind of target. They'll look for someone who's maybe a little overconfident or sick or weak and on the edge of the herd, and they'll make that one kind of get into the brush and the bush. And as Wayne could attest, probably, it is not easy to see in the brush. Your vision is completely impaired. And then, to further take away some more of your senses, he'll begin to make low growls and rumbles. And he'll begin to circle. So this prey item can't tell exactly where the lion is coming from. So you steal away that other sense of sound. So now you've lost your sight and your hearing. And as he gets closer and closer, he watches to see this prey stop moving. They become paralyzed and just unable to do anything. And when it feels right in time, it'll then pounce and it's gone. And that's really how I think Satan likes to do things, and he hunts. And we can see this and identify all these different strategies that he's going to use in 1 Peter chapter 5. And I think at the same time we can see what we can do to avoid becoming a hunted target. So let's pick up in 1 Peter chapter 5, starting in verse 6. It reads, "Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Be of sober spirit. Be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking somebody to devour. But resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that at the same time experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. It's a powerful statement and image that Peter gives to us here. The devil is like a roaring lion. So the question we have tonight is, how does this lion hunt? I think there's three things here we can see, and then coming into that always application, there's three things that I've found that we can do to avoid becoming a hunted target. Well, the first, as we see in verse 6, is how this lion hunts. He hunts through actions of pride. When he can see, remember how this lion hunts. He can see a target maybe get overconfident or just get stray away from the rest of their herd, its family, and then he'll force it away further to a point where it can really take advantage of the situation. And this happens quite often in our lives, or can happen. For instance, maybe saying that we begin to trust ourselves a little bit more than in God, or fully than in God. It can be really hard for people to just let things go and to put our full trust and faith in the Lord. I know that can be sometimes a challenge for me. I like to have and know what's coming up, an idea of a plan. And it's been really helpful to have Alyssa there to help support me in this, with knowing what's coming up in the future. It's always good to have a companion there to help me along when I don't know what's coming on. But we know that we have a Lord and a God who wants nothing more than for us than to provide for us and to give us all these good things. Remember Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not on your understandings. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." He wants nothing more than for us to lay our trust and faith in him, and he's then going to direct us down good and righteous paths. It can be hard to let go, but he wants us to. He wants us to be there to hold on to us. Or maybe we have what I would call a mindset of spiritual independence. And I'll define that for you. Spiritual independence is something that's really been plaguing, say, my generation, the generation that's coming up and a little bit older than me. It's this idea of saying, well, the Bible, it's a good book. There's a lot of good things in here, but I don't know if it's all applicable to me. I have this personal relationship with God, and he knows my heart, and he understands these things, so I'm going to take what I want out of this and go along from there, or just kind of ignore it altogether and just go with what my heart says, because, again, God knows me, and I have this relationship with him. And brothers and sisters, that just does not work. I will say this, it is impossible to be an army of one. Think about this, when you go to set up your shield in battle, you're facing that one direction. If you're an army of one, you don't have any shield mates around you, you might be able to block off the first 4 or 5 people coming at you, but somebody's eventually going to get around you and come up behind you and take you out. Somebody's going to slip by and get you. It's impossible to be spiritually independent, truly spiritually independent. Or maybe you're going to come in and say, my problems are my own. They're unique to me. My sins are unique to me. Well, that's just a rather false and I think maybe arrogant idea and statement. Think about what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10:13. He says, "No temptation has overtaken you such as is common to man. There is no such thing as a unique sin." It might be retooled and have a new face on it just for you, but there's no new thing under the sun for this. And what's encouraging about that, though, is that if I'm struggling with something, there's a good chance that somebody else in your life, in this crowd, is struggling or has struggled with that same issue. And you know that there's a chance to go find somebody to help you out and to lift you on and to carry you around and to be your companion and your shield mate throughout your life. It's great to have somebody there with you on your side. Or maybe we can build ourselves up in our minds as somebody who's untouchable. I've so studied and I'm so ready to go. My defenses are perfect and impenetrable that there's nothing that Satan can do to get at me. And that is, I believe, when we're at our most open for danger. Because as soon as we think we have an impenetrable wall, something is going to open up and fall. You can't have 100% guard, and when that slot, that hole opens that wall, the lion's going to reach his claws in and grab you and pull you out of that safety you have. It's never a good thing to get too comfortable in where you're at. And that's why we need to continue to study and to grow and always work together. And to remember who you are and where you've come from. It's important, I'd say, to not dwell on our past sins and our past problems, and not let ourselves become defined by them, but you can't forget what your weaknesses are. You might be able to build up every single strength for it, but as soon as you put that wall up, that hard wall up, you're going to forget there's a window open somewhere. And so he's going to let himself in. Remember what Paul says about himself, though. He calls himself a chief among sinners, a chiefest among sinners. That Paul remembers his past actions, his past life. He never lets himself forget about it. But he's not defined by it. He's not going to let other people define him by that, but he never forgets. He always remembers where to come from so that he was able to keep himself constantly going, building on his defenses. Well, I think the second thing that Satan uses to get at us is this. It's called the scent of anxiety. We see that in verse 7. He says, cast all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you. So remember, after the lion gets his prey in the bush, it likes to steal away their senses, taking away their vision, taking away their hearing, disorienting them so that they're confused and they can't trust upon itself. So what happens here when we let our worry take over? Well, as the prey does, we become spiritually paralyzed. We stop growing. As soon as you leave the Word and become anxious and worrisome, not being able to feel like you can't trust the Lord, you stop growing. You stop growing close to the Lord. Or when our defenses become lowered, because we've stopped digging in the Word and spending time with Him in prayer, it becomes easier for Satan to come in and for his lies to seep in and to steal you away out of your defenses. Or maybe worst of all, saddest of all, is that our lights begin to burn a little less. It means that we have a little less joy and happiness in our lives. Because isn't that what defines us? One of the most important things that defines us as being Christians is being able to have joy in all things, especially in suffering. How else are the people in the world supposed to know who we are and what we're about if we are not sharing and showing the joy in our lives? Satan can steal that away so easily, but the Lord has done some marvelous things for us. Look here at Psalms 55, verse 22. Psalm 55, verse 22 says, cast your burden upon the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be shaken. When you worry, when things begin to get hard, remember that He will sustain you. Or in Isaiah 41, verse 13, this is the Lord speaking directly through Isaiah. He says, for I am the Lord your God, who upholds your right hand, who says to you, do not fear, I will help you. How powerful is that to know that our God, our Father, our Creator, who's done all of these wonderful things, cares about each and every one of us individually. This important statement, he says, who upholds your right hand. At that time, your right hand was supposed to be the hand of strength. You're supposed to do everything with your right hand. You're strongly encouraged. You did everything with your right hand. This was the hand of power. This was the hand of strength and of direction. So if you were to give your right hand to somebody else, that means that you're letting them direct you and take you down their paths. That's what the Lord is asking for you to do. He's saying, give me your hand. Give me your hand of power and strength, and I will supplement that. And I will take care of this. And do not fear, because I will help you. I've got you. I've got your back. He wants nothing more than to help us to build this hope and trust in Him. The third thing that Satan does is he sees his prey, becomes unaware. In verse 8, it says, be of sober spirit and be on the alert. So finally, when all the defenses of the prey is gone, that is when the lion jumps to strike and takes his prey down. So what does it mean here, though, to be of sober spirit? Is he talking about, not being, as we might have the common term now, as being drunk or have our senses disoriented? It's not what he's saying there. We've kind of defined that word sober in one aspect, but that's not what it fully means. It also means to be clear-minded, to be sensible or thoughtful, and to be focused. In fact, you see this phrase of be sober multiple times throughout the New Testament. Almost every time it comes back to that idea of being clear-minded, of focused, of driven, to be looking towards the end goal, to not become distracted by the unimportant things in life. Because as soon as we do, as soon as we begin to let the world seep in and take over us, that is when Satan's darts and lies truly penetrate our defenses. the lion's claws get in and begin to cause us to bleed. Because all he wants is to take away and destroy our hope and confidence in our God and our Father. Take all of that joy away from us and fill it with lies and deceit and manipulation. So how do we avoid becoming his prey? That's the big question of the evening. How do we avoid becoming his prey? Well, the first is going to be this. We stay in verse 8. We need to make sure we keep aware. Keep aware. Keep on the lookout for the lion. I want to say this. Satan does not take breaks. He does not have a day off. He does not honor any of our holidays. He works 24/7, 365, doing everything he can to take us down. So how do we stay this vigilant? Your version might say vigilant or aware. How do we stay like this? Well, I'm going to say first is go back to the Word. If you will, turn over to Luke chapter 4. Turn over to Luke chapter 4, and you're going to see what Jesus did here when he became almost a prey of the lion. When the lion began to try to hunt him down. I think that when Peter writes in 1 Peter 3, verse 15, it says, always be ready to give a defense. He might have had this passage in mind, this story that Jesus would have told them about. We're looking at Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 13. And it says, Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led around by the Spirit in the wilderness for 40 days, being tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing during those days. And when they had ended, he became hungry. And the devil said to him, if you are the Son of God, tell this stone to become bread. And Jesus answered him, it is written that man shall not live on bread alone. And he led him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, I will give you all of this domain and its glory, for it has been handed over to me, and I will give it to whomever I wish. Therefore, if you worship before me, it shall be yours. And Jesus answered him, it is written that you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And he led him to Jerusalem and had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple. And he said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down for him. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And Jesus answered and said to him, it is said, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. And when the devil had finished every temptation, he left him until an opportune time. Jesus in his temptation period went back to the Word. Went back to know what the Lord said and what would get him through this. The truths that our Father has given to us. And that's what he used to fight back against the devil. But he also did this by setting himself up in prayer. Jesus prayed and had this time of meditation 40 days before he had this encounter with Satan. And it's really important, brothers and sisters, to make sure that we have a healthy prayer life with our Father. Not just because it's how we talk to him and convey what we need and what we're looking for in our lives, but this is how we build a relationship with him. How else do we build relationships with one another? We speak and talk to one another. We check on one another. We ask and let each other know what's going on in our lives. That's how you build a meaningful relationship. And that's what we do in prayer. You're talking and speaking to our Father. I encourage some of our young children. This past couple weekends ago, we had a youth blast. We called it a special weekend derived at kids. And I challenged our 4th and 5th graders to sit down for about 5 minutes and to write out a prayer that didn't talk about maybe saying, thank you, God, for the food, thank you, God, for my family, but to have a meaningful conversation with our Father, to sit and talk to him like he's sitting next to me or across the table from you. Really converse with him and share with him what's going on in your life, because he cares for you. He's a Father to us. And sometimes we can forget that level, that he is our Father. And the last thing I'd say that we do to stay vigilant and aware is that we need to connect with somebody who can be objective in our lives. And this is kind of getting to a scary moment. A lot of us, and this is me included, we tend to put up some facades. When we come into church and maybe we are struggling with something and someone can read our face and see something's wrong and ask us, what's our first go-to answer? Oh, I'm doing fine. Everything's great. I'm good. And you kind of begin to smile and feel like everything's okay, but in the back of your head you know you're struggling with something. Your brothers and sisters care for you. They love you. They want nothing more than to help you out on your paths. Think about this. I'm going to move the imagery from a lion to a different animal, iconic animal from Africa, the meerkat. You ever seen the show? It used to be on Animal Planet called Meerkat Manor. And what they did is they follow along these coupled meerkat families. But what's so fascinating about them is that while they're out scrounging around for food and doing their things, they have one that's called the sentry. And he'll stand upon a large rock or something out there, watching out for any sort of danger, looking for hawks or jackals or hyenas or the lion. They're looking, and as soon as they see the danger begin to approach, they'll give these yips and barks of warning, and it's hilarious to watch these videos of how quickly they scatter and get back into their holes and their tunnels. They've got somebody that they trust and they know is looking out for them and for their best interests. I think we can learn something here from the meerkat. But we got to have somebody in our life who's going to stand vigilant for us, looking out for the dangers in our life, who can make a call of warning to us and help us then to get away from the danger that's coming to us in our lives. We need to make sure that we're not walking through our lives physically and spiritually with our blinders on to the dangers that's coming, that we can only see what's right in front of us. Because if we do, we're going to fail to see what's coming from the sides. Well, the second thing to do, how to avoid becoming a prey, is to remain firm and resist. We see this verse both in verse 7 and verse 9. I'm going to commend us all on this, is do not go out unarmed. When you go out into the bush, you do not go out just like this. If I went out into the African bush like this, I would be dead. I would not survive because I have no means to protect myself from the dangers that come from there. In fact, the people of Tsavo learned a valuable lesson. They are now known as some of the fiercest and best lion hunters in the world. And the lions that are still in the area know to keep away from people, because as soon as they get close and interact, their numbers shrink. Because the people have learned how to defend themselves. I say, do not go out armed. Paul gives us a great example in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 13 through 17, about how to not go out unarmed. And we should all be very familiar with this passage. It is the armor of God. Listen along. It says, therefore, take up the full armor of God, so that you'll be able to resist him in the evil days, having done everything to stand firm. So stand firm, therefore, having girded your loins with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, with which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. He's saying, do not go out unarmed. I defined this in another sermon as our white armor. We are encouraged to take off our old bloody clothes of sin and to put on this white, this pure armor that's going to direct us down right paths. And when we do that, when we put on this armor, we're also putting on some amazing promises from God. He promises to guide us. We just talked about Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6. He said he's going to direct our paths. And he's promised to support us in 1 Corinthians 10:13. After he continues with the no temptations overtaking you, which is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able. He's not going to allow for us to fall. It might be struggle. We might struggle for a while with things, but he's going to be there to take away the heaviest of the burdens. And he's going to allow us to, what we have is what he knows we can deal with. And that can be very encouraging for some of us to see maybe some people are really struggling. There seems to be a lot of heavy burdens on them. But when their burdens are lifted off, you know that maybe I can share some of my burdens with them. Because I can see that they can handle a heavy load. Maybe they can help support me in my heavy load. I like this idea of family, if you can't tell, we're working together. We're going to come to this again and hit it real hard in the next point. But he also has promised us one thing. While we're journeying through the bush, trying to avoid the lion, he's promised us that waiting for us is a safe place. A place of peace, a place of joy, a place of perfect rest. A beautiful home that's described in Revelation for us. There's a place waiting for us. We just got to make it through that path. we've got to remain firm and trusting in Him and His power, we will make it to a wonderful and marvelous home. The last thing we need to do, we need to make sure that we stay together. I defined it earlier and said that it is impossible to be an army of one. And I'm going to reiterate this in a different light, is that Christianity is a hard walk alone. It is really hard to do it alone. And I think that's why He's encouraged us to take on partners, to take on friends, to take on brothers and sisters, to be a part of a family. Because what do we do when we're within a family? What do families do? They support each other. We build each other up. Think about what we're doing here tonight. We're here to worship. So we come together to build each other up in a positive and a rather safe environment. So that's what it's supposed to be. That's what worship is supposed to be. A positive and safe place to come together, to praise our God and to help each other grow. Think about what he says in Colossians 3, verse 16. Colossians 3:16. He says, "Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God." We're teaching and building one another when we sing songs and praise. And we also should make sure that we're holding each other accountable. Have you thought about some of these songs and some of the songs we sing, what they are? Some of them are prayers. Some of them are strong oaths or promises to God. Maybe think about the song, "I want to be a worker for the Lord." Isn't that a really strong promise and an oath, a declaration I'm making? Saying, I want to be a worker for the Lord. I want to do your work. Are you? Are you asking there to take on that burden to help somebody in the world, to get close to the Lord? Are you taking advantage of those opportunities that He gives us? And are we holding each other accountable in that? I think that's why we sing. One of the reasons we sing together is to build each other up, to hold each other accountable in this. And another reason that, one way that we can build each other up when we come together is in our struggles. I mentioned it already. This is why we have a family. This is why we have families. When we struggle, we know that our families, physical families, my direct family, I know that they're going to do all they can to support me in all good things. And I can rely on them to help me through this. And that's what our spiritual family does as well. They want nothing. They want nothing more than to see you grow and to build you up. That's what this family did for me when I was here for 5.5 years. Yeah, that took that long to finish school. They were here for me for this, and that's why it's such a blessing for me to be able to be here to show them some of the investments they made into me, and for my future family to be able to see what hopefully they're entrusting their daughter with, and for my family to see all the investments they put in for this. Because 2 days after I was born, they decided to welcome me into their family, to give me their name, and to share their life with me. I don't know where I would have been if it hadn't been for my mom and dad. I know I probably wouldn't be here. But because they took a little boy who needed a place to live and a home, and needed a name, they took their life and said, we're going to share all things with you. We're going to make sure that you know the Lord, and that you know what it means to be a Christian, to find out what it truly means to be adopted into a family. This family wants nothing more to see you grow. In fact, I want to identify and dispel one of Satan's greatest lies that are perpetuated throughout the church in history. And it's this, is that when we admit we have a problem, that people are going to look down on you. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people come to me and say, well, I don't feel I can go and talk to people about my problems in my past, because as soon as I do, they're going to look at me differently in a negative light, and things are going to change, and I don't want that. That's the opposite of actually what occurs. As soon as we are honest and open with one another and share our problems and share your burdens, share the load, they're not going to tear you down. Your brothers and sisters are going to lift you up. And they're going to lift you up and put you before the throne and say, Father, I have somebody I love, I cherish, I care about. I have somebody who needs your help. Will you help them with me? That is what your family does. And young people, I'm young too, but I'm going to say it's young people. If you've not found a church home while you're here at school to get active in, please do so. This would be a great family to do that with. They are going to love you and take care of you and look out for you, and they have such open hearts and open minds to help you through your path and through your life. I don't know if I would be here today if it had not been for this church family. They took me in and became another adopted family to me. I missed my mom and dad, but I had so many adopted mothers and fathers and grandparents to look out for me while I was a student here, that they cared and constantly looked out after me. In fact, Kenny still texts me every couple months to ask, how you doing? How are things going? When are you coming back? Of course, this is the secondary to that, but it's good to know that people still care about you and still reach out for you. So I've mentioned them. So members here, I know you do a good job with it. Please continue to do a good job with this. You might not see the immediate effects of your love and your care for these people, these young people. It happens. Drake and I miss you all so much. We talk about it almost every week of how much we enjoyed and miss the North Boulevard family and the impacts you had in our lives. And Lord willing, he'll be, I don't know if he'll be here Wednesday, but he's going to be here at least Wednesday, and I'm going to try to make sure he's here Wednesday for y'all. But you've made such impacts and changes in young people's lives. Thank you. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue to be this strong type family that I know you are. It's so comforting to know, though, at the same time, that if I'm struggling with something, there's somebody here I can talk to help me throughout, and to help lift me up and bring me through my struggle, to help me in my steadfast walk to the Lord. So I want to end tonight with an interesting thought that comes out of this passage. I want you to look again at chapter 8 in 1 Peter, in verse 8. Because Peter does something really interesting here. And if you don't have it marked, I'll say mark, underlined, circled, highlighted, something, please do so. And it's here in that verse. It says, be of sober spirit, be on the alert, for your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion. Mark that word like. It's important. I am marrying an English major. It is important that I have learned the literary things and such that go with this. That word like is the signifier of a metaphor. It's a description that he's giving. He's saying the devil prowls around like a roaring lion. And when the lion with this beast, this unknown figure, finally appears to get you, after he's done all of his tactics, and he finally appears to try to take you down, you can't quite tell what it actually is. It might have sounded like a lion. It might have used the same hunting tactics like a lion, but what's standing in front of you is not what you're expecting. It's not the powerful lion. And then you see, whatever this thing is in front of you, its eyes get wide and begins to take a few steps back. Because out from the bush next to you, supporting you, is the real lion. Behold, the lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome. So let's open the book and it's 7 seals. The real lion's appeared and he is not happy. Because this phony, this imposter is hunting in his land, in his kingdom, and is trying to take one of his servants. The Lion of Judah, Jesus, the true lion, comes to stand with us as a protector, not a predator. He stands with us and shows us what the real king looks like. What the true lion looks like, what real power looks like. And I, for one, am glad that he is on my side. And that he is there to chase away that fake, phony beast. So if you need for that great king to stand beside you and to help you chase off that fake lion that's attacking you in your life, come forward now as we stand and as we sing.